What's happening? It's Todd McShay, and I'm back with a new home and a new show at The Ringer and Spotify. The McShay Show. It's a video and audio podcast coming to you year-round with all my NFL draft information, big boards, mock drafts, and player movement. Plus, I'll be chatting with some of my best friends in football, including some of your favorite football analysts. During the week, we'll have episodes on Tuesdays and Thursdays that'll include discussions about my player rankings, who's rising, who's falling, and who your NFL team should be keeping an eye on. Plus, we'll be reacting each week to the college football playoff polls and giving you previews and picks for each Saturday slate. In addition, I'll have episodes on Saturday nights with my immediate reaction to the full day in college football every week. So if you love the college game, the NFL, the draft, or all of it like me, make sure to like, follow, subscribe, and get ready for the McShay Show on The Ringer, Spotify, and wherever you watch or listen to podcasts.
Welcome to the Ringer NFL Show. Sheil Kapadia here with Stephen Ruiz and Diante Lee. It's a little mock draft Monday. We're the only people in America who have not done one of these yet, so we're going to do one today. We have divided the teams among the three of us. We are going to make all 32 first-round selections based on who we think teams will take. So we're getting into the heads of these GMs and decision makers and saying, I could see them liking this player. I could see them picking this player. No trades in this one. We're going to circle back in the next week or two, and we will do one with trades. But this is just 1 to 32 as they're laid out now. We're going to make the picks. Ruiz, how did you find this process of prepping for the teams you were assigned?
I was talking to you before the pod, and we're both kind of coming into this process late. We haven't been in the weeds with draft season, and I mean it's better. You know everyone already has their opinions out there on all these players, and you don't have to derive your own opinions from them. So I feel good about it. I felt good. I just went through position by position, put together a little top 5 for each one, and I feel confident about this process.
Huh. Very Diante. That's a smart way for Ruiz to do it. I'm going to be looking all over the place. I've got various spreadsheets. I should have just done that. Top 5 at each position. Look at the team. What position do I think they're going to take? Who's left? And done it that way. So Ruiz might be a little more organized than me for this one.
I will say, in terms of efficiency and preparation, I think I rank last, and we are probably closer to one another as compared to Steven. I think we've had a lot of conversations pre-pod or opening up the podcast where I realized, Steven's so much better at preparing his information than I am. I'm bouncing around from tab to tab more often than not.
No, this is what happens when you're a fraud and you're afraid of being exposed. You have to have all your ducks in a row before the pod.
I've got the tabs open too. I'll find them. We will find them. We will figure it out. This is going to be fun. We did the draft order. Diante is going to pick first for the Titans. Ruiz picks second for the Browns. I pick third for the Giants. And then we just keep going. 1, 2, 3, all the way down. I did the veteran podcaster move. I did get one fewer team than these two guys. So, that's the smart, savvy veteran move that they will be able to execute.
I already messed up my prep because I went in assuming that I had the first pick, and I was wrong about that. I forgot that I had the second pick, so I'm already off kilter.
Listen, this is what teams have to do. They got to figure it out on the fly. All right, Diante, get us started. You are on the clock. The Tennessee Titans with the first overall pick. What do you got?
I wish there was some suspense here that we could apply to the situation. We're going with what's obvious, what's been clearly hinted at, reported upon, that Tennessee is prepared to take Cam Ward, number one, and that's what we're doing here. Obviously need to address the quarterback situation. I know we've really belabored this point, right, of talking throughout the season about their quarterback situation, about Will Levis not having it, about this coaching staff needing to figure something out at quarterback in order to really kind of trigger what they want to be a quick rebuild, right? And I think that since we're not making trades, this makes it easy. And if we're just looking at the field, even though Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, a lot of other guys could go and be instant impact players, there's nothing more important for Tennessee right now than going to get a quarterback. And I think that Ward's upside, his potential, is just high enough to really make this an interesting move for Tennessee within this offense.
I feel like if you're Brian Callahan, you're almost trapped into taking a quarterback at this point. Just because you're in year 2, year 1 went so poorly, and then Will Levis obviously hasn't worked out. That's not the guy that Callahan wanted to bring in. Obviously, he was already in place when Callahan was hired. And it would suck to go, you get your first opportunity to be a head coach in the NFL, and you never really get to pick your quarterback. And there's a chance that, like, if he has a bad year this year with how, I mean, me and Sheil were on this all season, but like how ugly things looked at times, if he has another bad year, I wouldn't be surprised if it's his last opportunity at getting this job, especially in the NFL. So you're almost inclined to take a quarterback because of that pressure. And this is not like the best year to have that pressure on you. But I do like Cam Ward as a prospect. Maybe not as like a 1.1, top pick in the draft, but as a top 10 pick, sure. Why not?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, when you decide when you're going to become a head coach, and I don't, Brian Callahan is not someone like Ben Johnson who is going to, have a lot of options. I think he was sort of a little bit under the radar. Can you get somewhere that already has a quarterback who you like? Sometimes. If you can't, then that's kind of where you're left with. So I feel like on the range of possibilities, Cam Ward is like a decent one. He's going to have tools. He was very good in college last year, and now you have to do your job. You are an offensive-minded head coach. You rebuilt the offensive line. Now you have to figure out a way to get the most out of this prospect. Doesn't mean it's definitely going to work. You're right. It's not a perfect situation, but I think all signs are pointing towards this one. And it could be worse if you're Brian Callahan. If they had like just the fourth overall pick, it's a different situation.
If they had the second overall pick.
Second overall pick. Yeah, you're right. So it does.
One of the things I'm just kind of fascinated by, and I wasn't really thinking about it until now as we were talking, is if you're Brian Callahan, I mean, you're just feeling an uneasy period because they went and hired a GM. As you know, that your job security is probably not the greatest, right? Because you're not having the best year. So I'm sure he does not have a lot of roster power as it is anyways. Even if he didn't want Cam Ward, like Steven was saying, you're kind of forced into taking this based on where the roster is at, based on where the franchise situation is. And I think that now if you're Callahan, based off of what it was like with Will Levis, you can't have that September and October that you had with Will Levis. Otherwise, this GM really doesn't need to stay married to you much longer, right? And this staff has not proven very much. So I think if you're the Titans, you're happy. I think if you're Callahan specifically, you've got to be spending a lot of time in the office now trying to figure out exactly how you can maximize what Cam Ward is as a quarterback.
Yeah, I'd be excited if I were a Titans fan. It's not guaranteed to work out. It depends on the year, but in terms of how quarterback prospects go, if Cam Ward hits, he's going to be a fun player in the NFL. So obviously there's a long way to go and there's so much unknown with the draft process, but there's a chance that this ends up working out for Tennessee. All right, Ruiz now is on the clock, the second overall pick, the Cleveland Browns, an interesting one. What direction are you going in?
Can I draft a new owner? Is that an option?
I think a lot of teams would love to do that. Yeah.
I'm just going to go Travis Hunter. I'm going to go with maybe the top player on the board. On anybody's big board, obviously could play cornerback. You play wide receiver. I would draft him as a cornerback, full-time cornerback. Maybe he gets a package on offense, but that wouldn't be something that's not the reason why I would be drafting him, because of the wide receiver part of it. I wouldn't be like, oh yeah, in 10 years, he's going to be a Pro Bowl wide receiver. In 10 years, he probably wouldn't be playing wide receiver anymore, based on the toll that playing in the NFL is going to take on his body. But yeah, Travis Hunter, I mean, you've heard like the Browns cornerbacks, like after the season, were like, I don't know how long I'm going to be sticking around here. So I do think they need a replacement plan for Denzel Ward anyway. So, and Hunter can play alongside of him. And I don't think like what you have on the roster should preclude you from taking a player at that position unless it's a quarterback, because the truth of the matter in the NFL, you need two cornerbacks, you need two wide receivers, sometimes you need two tight ends, sometimes you need two tackles, two guards. Quarterback and center are the only positions where you only have one on the field at all times. So yeah, I'm taking Hunter and I'm not even thinking twice about it if I'm the Browns.
Yeah. Hunter is awesome. He'll fit well in that defense. Not that you're just drafting specifically for Jim Schwartz's defense, because there's a lot of unknown in Cleveland, but he had over 200 snaps of man coverage last year, according to Pro Football Focus. That was seventh most among corners. And on those snaps, so 220 snaps of man coverage, he gave up 11 catches for 94 yards total.
It seems like he's getting better as a corner too. If you watch the tape 2 years ago compared to last year, like you could really see him refine his game. Maybe playing under Dion, that was one of the perks. I am interested to see how that progresses when he gets under a new coaching staff. But yeah, I could see him becoming one of the top corners in the league in a couple of years based on his current trajectory.
I agree. I will say, though, to kind of break the exercise for a second, there is just kind of this suspicion that I have that Cleveland is willing to show interest in any prospect that makes it possible that a team wants to get up to number 2 to try to trade. And I think that that's smart. If you're Andrew Berry, I think that that's a really smart idea. If there's a lot of heat around Travis Hunter and you can't get access to the number 1 pick, the best thing you can do is make sure that the rest of the league knows that you're as interested in him as everybody else, right? Like, I think if trades were on the table here, I would want to shop this pick. If I were Steven, I'd want to shop this pick with New York. I'd want to shop this pick with New England, see if I can get a day 2 pick as a return for this. And you can go take Travis Hunter. And now maybe I get enough dart throws to start addressing the offensive line and, some of the things that we've lost defensively and add some depth in that respect as well. So I like this from Cleveland's position strategically. There are a lot of things that they have to address with this team. I know when I did my mock draft, I gave him Will Campbell because looking at that 2 deep with the offensive line, you see a lot of aging guys and you see them taking steps backwards at the tackle position over the last couple of years as well. So I'm really fascinated to see once we do start getting closer to draft weekend, do start getting closer to that Thursday in late April, what exactly it is that Cleveland wants to do with this pick, because I'm starting to feel like they might be just trying to poke around and see if there's a team desperate enough to get Hunter to go make a move up a couple spots to get him.
Do you think that player is Hunter, like the player that we're going to pretend we are enamored with to get teams, or is it Abdul Carter?
Well, they've kind of done it with both. A week ago, it was like they're taking Abdul Carter. So
Exactly.
I think Diante's point is right, that nobody knows who they're going to take. And so you show interest in both guys, and there are reports from legitimate sources that they're going to take Abdul Carter. Nope. There's reports from legitimate sources that now is Travis Hunter. So if you are another team that loves one of those guys over the other one, now, you have to think about, all right, we don't know, so let's go ahead and be aggressive and make that move. So that's a good point, because, there is some unknown here about who they're going to take. By the way, I do wonder if they would play Travis Hunter at wide receiver right away if they were the team that drafted him, given that they've got corners on the roster right now that they like, that they're thin at wide receiver. So that would be an interesting one for me to see.
That would be tough on the quarterback. Because the one thing about Travis Hunter is he hasn't played like a ton of wide receiver. He's not like a polished wide receiver. And then you have Jerry Jeudy, who is like a productive wide receiver, but also has that thing where, like, I don't know how long it's going to take him to run this route. It might take him like 15 seconds to run this quick slant.
They're duplicative, right? Like they're a little duplicative. I think the Travis Hunter ceiling as a receiver is better because he plays the ball in the air so well, right? He is a really dynamic athlete. But I do think in terms of like route running chops, they're very, very similar.
Like I'm imagining like a quarterback dropping back on like a 3-step drop, and I got to get the ball out quick, and then Judy's recording like a TikTok dance at the line of scrimmage, and then Travis Hunter is just doing his own thing because he hasn't been taught full time how to play wide receiver. I just wouldn't want to be in that position.
It's Kenny Pickett. He's going to take some time anyway.
They've got
that's
time. The worst.
The ball might not even get out.
They've got time to get open. They've got time to get open. And I think they would, even in that scenario, they would prefer Travis Hunter over whoever the other option would be for wide receiver too. But we shall see. All right. So now it gets interesting. I've got the New York Football Giants at number 3. Do you pull the trigger on a Shedeur Sanders and say, you know what? We threw some darts at Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson. Let's throw a Hail Mary here. Let's see what Shedeur Sanders looks like in this offense. Play point guard for Brian Daboll. You have Malik Neighbors. Maybe you can figure something out. Do you do that, or do you go in a completely different direction? I was looking at this tweet from my friend Fran Duffy, who was tweeting out how often a team, there's this thought that if you're on the hot seat, take the quarterback because it buys you time. And it's just not grounded in reality. I mean, he went over the last 10 years or whatever it was, and GMs and coaches get fired all the time after taking a quarterback in the top 10 picks. So I don't think it would save their jobs necessarily, unless Shedeur Sanders obviously came in and played well. I don't think they're going Shedeur Sanders. I'm going Abdul Carter with this pick for the New York Giants, edge rusher from Penn State. I just looked at it and I thought, all right, if they just signed Russell Wilson, if they just signed Jameis Winston, maybe I would be more inclined to say maybe they still like Shedeur Sanders. They signed both those guys, and it just feels like they're looking at this and saying, Shedeur Sanders, because they have to have a pretty good feeling that he could be available, a strong possibility that he's there for them at number 3. So I just don't know that they throw 2 darts at quarterback in the offseason if they really liked Shedeur Sanders and wanted him to be their quarterback. Maybe I'll be wrong, but I think in Carter, you kind of strengthen a strength and you say, hey, Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, Abdul Carter. Maybe we've got something there with our defensive line. I know, you don't look at positions that much. If you're the Giants, because you've got so much work to do. Thibodeau's going into the final year of his contract anyway. So I think they would just go best player available. It's a premium position and say, let's go Abdul Carter, and we'll see what this looks like with Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston. Diante, what do you think? Do you think that would be the situation they would go, or do you think they would be more likely to go Shedeur Sanders?
I think circumstantially, just like we were talking about with Tennessee kind of being shoehorned into taking a quarterback, I think that New York in a lot of ways is kind of trapped at 3, right? They don't have a lot of avenues. There's really no easy way to try to set up their draft board if we're not trading up or back, right? And if you're going to stick at 3 and Hunter goes number 2, then yeah, Carter's the next best guy. When I was doing my drafts, I didn't think about edge because I'm thinking about Thibodeau. But honestly, if Carter's available, you let Carter go play edge. If Tibbs can give you something, awesome. If not, you try to trade him by the trade deadline. See if you can get some mid-round value back, right? If you absolutely have to, if it's not working, if he's not just going to be a depth piece for you. And you have what might be one of the most dynamic athletes, if not the best defensive player in this class, right? If you're talking about ceiling and positional value. So I like this for New York. I think that the combo of he and Brian Burns at their best when everybody's healthy can be really good and be dynamic in terms of pass rushing chops. And like you said, I think that we would have heard a lot more from New York about taking Shedeur Sanders, given all the work that they had been doing on him throughout the season, right? You've seen all the reporting on how often they were out in Colorado working on Hunter, working on Sanders, trying to get scouting reports together, trying to see if those guys were fits for their program. And then they go out and bring in 2 veteran quarterbacks, neither of which are so important that it precludes you from going out and getting a rookie.
Right.
But I don't think you get Russell Wilson. I don't think Russell Wilson is negotiating with you knowing you have a top 3 pick, unless he has an idea that the quarterback job is genuinely open for me in 2025. Right? Jameis Winston is whatever, but I think if you go get 2 veterans, I think that's the idea there is you want a guy who has done this before under center for this year. And given the way that John Mara allowed these guys to keep their jobs, I've got to think that they went into this offseason feeling like as long as 2025 is not a disaster, in season, we probably get a longer runway than most people would have thought to try to build this thing. And I think that trying to take a swing at tackle, at edge rusher makes a lot of sense for this team in that respect. So I like this pick for New York.
It might be too rich for this player at number 3, but imagine taking Mason Graham and putting him next to Dexter Lawrence and just, building a defense around that. If this team is going to make the playoffs, they need something like that, some position group, some strength that you could kind of build your whole game plan around. And if you have those 2 guys dominating in the interior, I think you could go a long way. I think you get a 9-win season out of that as long as the offense isn't a total disaster. That's why you have Brian Daboll to coach up the offense. So I don't know. If I was them, if trading down was an option and I could trade down a couple picks and someone wants to, leap up to take Abdul Carter, because if he's still there at 3, I think there will be suitors, especially to get in front of New England, then that would be the plan I would want to play out.
All right, maybe in our trade mock coming up on a future episode, maybe this is a trade back spot. All right, Diante's up. So we got Cam Ward, Travis Hunter, and Abdul Carter are off the board. Diante is up with the New England Patriots. If you look at this hasn't gone how they would hope for it to go with Shedeur Sanders not going off the board. So who do the Patriots go with at number 4?
Yeah, when I was kind of playing out all the ways that this might go for us on the show, I expected those to be the top 3 picks. And then you look at New England, it's this is actually not the greatest position to be in terms of how the draft board is working out if 2 quarterbacks don't go, because now you don't have access to Carter, you don't have access to Hunter. I think the next best thing for them would just be taking a tackle. And then that leaves you with an interesting debate about how you feel about Armand Mimbu, right? Especially if you're going to move him from right to left going into his rookie year versus Will Campbell, who already plays the position, but is not necessarily as physically dominant at times as you see on Mimbu's tape. But to me, I just look at Campbell, and this is a pedigree thing for me. So I'm going with him at number 4. He's been the left tackle, been the best left tackle in football, in college football for several years now. Had been a starter at LSU from the day he stepped on campus. You have all these pure pass sets. I know, Sheil, you were talking with Fran Duffy about this on Philly Special, right? And all of his pure pass set work looks really good. You look at the technique and it's there. The athleticism is there. The arm length does show up as an issue, but maybe not as consistently and as significantly to the point where you would really mark it as a red flag. He just might end up being a really solid left tackle instead of an all-pro because he does have some length issues. But I think that it's almost impossible for this guy to bust when you watch the tape. And if he's not an elite tackle prospect, if the arm length does become an issue in the league, I think you could step him into guard and he would instantly be a fringe all-pro talent at guard, just looking at his tape as a pass protector and what he can do for you as a run blocker.
Yeah. I like Campbell, and they weren't able to really build up the pieces around Drake May in free agency, in the trade market. They dumped a lot of resources on the defensive side of the ball. So while Patriots fans might be a little disappointed that you don't end up with Carter or Travis Hunter, I think, getting a franchise left tackle, and I think Campbell is a great prospect. I would be pretty happy about that if I were New England. All right, Ruiz, the Jacksonville Jaguars. You are up with the 5th overall pick. This is interesting. Do you have the guy you just mentioned, or are you going in a different direction?
No, I'm going to go with the guy I just mentioned. I spoiled the pick. I'm going to go with Mason Graham. Okay. I mean, you just look at the interior of their defensive line, and it's just not good enough. And this just is like the easiest pick so far, I believe. Maybe you can argue Cam Ward to Tennessee, but it's the perfect spot to take this guy. It's probably where he's going to go. That's where he's going on all like the consensus big boards. You have a need there. And I think he could be a player where we look back at this draft in 5 years and we're like, yeah, he was always supposed to be a top 5 pick, a top 10 pick. And he is exactly what we expected him to be coming from Michigan. He could play a 3-tech. He can affect the quarterback, the passing game on third down, which is really what you want. He can create negative plays on early downs. I wouldn't overthink this pick at all. This is another one where I'm running up to the podium to hand it in.
Yeah, I feel like outside of Cam Ward at number 1 overall, this is the only other pick that's hitting at like almost 100% rate when you look at mock drafts and you look at how other people expect for this draft to go. And I mean, Jacksonville has kind of hinted as much about wanting to take several swings in the front 7, right, to try to address some of their issues with stopping the run and giving up explosive plays that they had last season. And if you don't have Hunter, who could play corner, available to you, the next best thing is addressing the defensive interior here. And Mason Graham fits what I think Anthony Campanile wants to do in terms of having a disruptive guy on the interior. You've got big edges around him. Maybe Trevon Walker continues to take a step forward. I think he's still a little bit production ahead of what he is as an actual player, right? When you're watching on a down-to-down basis, but he's turned out to be a pretty solid, a pretty dependable edge rusher. And I think that you feel good about Josh Hines Allen as well. And I think that maybe you can address corner a little bit later in the draft. I think that as we have this conversation in the 20s or so, I think that one of the things that I'm really starting to take away from this class is that if you want to get multiple swings of the bat at positional needs, you might need to double dip in the first round. And I think if you're Jacksonville, you take Mason Graham and you start hanging around and peeking around in the 20s and seeing if there's a team that wants to give up a pick, and maybe you can swoop back in and get a corner later on in the first round. So I like this pick for Jacksonville, and it would definitely be a big step forward for them.
He has the best chance, especially of like the guys that were drafted ahead of him. I guess Abdul Carter has this chance of being like a truly transformational player for that defense and changing what they do. So yeah, I would feel really confident about this one if I was Jacksonville. And I do wonder if Trent Baalke, if he was still around, if this wouldn't be an option, because Graham does have the shorter arms. I think there are concerns in that regard.
He's off Baalke's board.
And Baalke, I don't know if he's going to be on Baalke's board because of that, but he's not there. So now they can take the best player available.
Yeah, Ruiz mentioned that he and I come to the draft process a little later. When I watched Mason Graham a couple of weeks ago, I was like, this guy's incredible. One of my favorite guys in like the top 10. Because you read profiles and you read what people write and you have a vision of a guy in your head. And then I watched him and I'm like, not only is he so stout at the point of attack, but his like movement ability, his agility for a defensive tackle that size, I thought was awesome. I'm with Ruiz. He could be like a game wrecking type player who we look back at this draft as easily one of the best guys from this draft, one of the most impactful guys. So I like that one quite a bit. All right, let's take a break because I got the Raiders on the clock at 6.
This is where it gets interesting.
And I'm debating between 2 players, so I need to take a break, get my composure, get in the head of Tom Brady and Pete Carroll and John Spytek and Mark Davis and whoever else and figure out who the Las Vegas Raiders are going to take. All right, we're back on the Ringer NFL show. So far, we've got Cam Ward, Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, Will Campbell, and Mason Graham off the board. That leaves the Las Vegas Raiders with the 6th overall pick. They signed Geno Smith, or they trade for Geno Smith. They hire Pete Carroll. They give Max Crosby the extension. Tom Brady will be in the draft room. I don't know if you guys, I didn't know that for sure.
Aware of this.
Yeah, I was reading The Athletic. I think it was, I don't know if it was Tashawn Reed or Vic Tafer wrote in there that he is expected to be in the draft room. So this is like legit involved Tom Brady. And I'm debating between two players here. One is the guy you will probably see mocked to the Raiders a lot in the weeks ahead, and that is Ashton Jeanty, running back from Boise State, tackle breaking machine. Pete Carroll can look at him and say he is going to be the identity of our offense, of our football team. Had 151 forced missed tackles last year per Dane Brugler. That was 57 more than any other player in the country. Just impossible to bring down at first contact. So he's one guy I'm considering. And the other guy is one of the ones that Diante mentioned, Armand Membo, offensive tackle from Missouri, 6'4", 332, played right tackle last year. Crazy athleticism with all the athletic testing. Will only be 21 years old as a rookie. Do they say this is the harder player to find positional value? We can find a running back in the later rounds. And I think ultimately, the Raiders go offensive tackle. I think Tom Brady comes in and Tom, maybe Pete Carroll saying, we're taking Jeanty, right? And Brady comes in and says, no, let's fix that offensive line first, and then we'll worry about the running back. So Armand Membo, the offensive tackle from Missouri, is the pick here for the Las Vegas Raiders. Ruiz, you study a Brady and the Brady analysis and what Brady says during all these games on Sundays. Who do you think, did I get it right? Or do you think they're saying, no, Ashton Jeanty is just our guy?
I mean, I could see Brady being kind of old school and going with the running back and being like, if we draft this running back, we save our run game, when like really you need the offensive line.
Help first. Geno Smith.
I think Membu, he might help the run game more than Jeanty would in a way. But yeah, no, I do think Brady understands the value of an offensive line. Like when he had his worst years in New England, and they weren't that bad, obviously, but it was offensive line issues were usually the problem. Like he didn't have enough time to read out the field. And Geno Smith is that style of quarterback, I think Tom Brady expects him to be that style of quarterback, but he needs a little more extra time compared to Brady, who doesn't, to read the defense. And I think it's smart to build up the offensive line first. Don't make the same mistakes. We've seen other teams trying to build an offense from scratch, including the Bears last year. I know it was a slightly different situation with their number one overall pick, but they went wide receiver first, and then we saw what happened. It was a disaster. I think Brady, who had a year to step back and watch the league, and he was preparing for games. He was watching teams every different week. I think he understood that. I think that's one of his main takeaways if you listen to him throughout the season.
What do you think, Diante? Did I get it right, or you think they're going Jeanty?
No, I love this pick. I wasn't expecting it, right? Like okay. I'm still curious. I'm curious really about what teams who need offensive playmakers think of this trio of Ashton Jeanty, T-Mac, and Tyler Warren. I look at those three as being kind of tied together, right? Because none of them are really perfect prospects, two of which I think was more a positional value thing, right? And I think that for Tetairoa McMillan, you're really just talking about ceiling, right? That's his issue more than anything. I do like what you were saying about, I mean, whether you're Brady or if you're Pete Carroll and you're looking at your days with Marshawn Lynch, and you're like, hey, man, this is a pocket-sized version of what I might have had in Seattle. I might want a running back that we can really lean upon with Geno Smith. But I think if Membu's available here, and I do expect that one of the two tackles will be here at this spot, the smart moves, the eat your vegetable moves, if you're Las Vegas, is to take Membu, take a tackle here, continue to plug these holes along the offensive line, really try to solidify it as much as possible around Geno Smith in year one to make sure you're maximizing what you just traded for. And yeah, you can make other moves later on in the first round or on day two of the draft to see if you can add value at wide receiver, at running back. Your tight end room is taken care of. I like where the defense is at already. And I think that this will be a very disciplined move, right? I think if we see a move like that, what that tells us is, okay, Spytek and Brady really do believe in what they had in Tampa Bay, and that's what they're going to try to build here. If it's a guy like Jeanty, McMillan, Tyler Warren, maybe not Tyler Warren because he plays tight end, but Jeanty and McMillan, that to me would sound more like, okay, Pete Carroll went in there and said, I told everybody we're competing in year one. I need dynamic playmaking so that way we can compete in year one, right? That to me, I think is kind of the potential divergence and pathways for this team.
It's a great description. Disciplined move. I think that's right. I think that would be the narrative if they went offensive tackle here and passed on Diante. Listen, Pete Carroll used to always like to brag that he was the one who identified Chris Carson in the 7th round when Carson was having those good years for the Seahawks. So he can flex a little bit and be like, don't worry. All right, I'm good with this plan. I'll find us a running back later in the draft. All right. Number 7, the 7th overall pick, the New York Jets. Diante. Who are they going with here at this spot?
Put yourself in Brick's shoes. Where's he going? Fire up college football 25. We'll go to the roster page, sort by overall.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what player on his Madden Ultimate team is he missing, right? What position does he have the biggest need at? And he wants to add
he's drafting Jalen Milroe. He's drafting Jalen Milroe if he's pacing off of the video games.
1,000%. I'm going to go with Tetairoa McMillan. I actually think that this has kind of been an underplayed piece of New York's kind of roster pivot, is that they've lost a lot of bodies at wide receiver. Right. And I was thinking about him here. I was thinking about Tyler Warren here as well. And with both tackles off the board, I will leave offensive line alone if I'm New York in this scenario. So I'll take T-Mac here. Obviously, I mentioned the ceiling as a potential issue, but I do think he separates pretty well for a guy his size. He can play the ball in the air really well. He does have good hands. He doesn't necessarily have the breakaway speed you'd like to see from your big, strong kind of linear athlete type, right? So he's not that. And he's also not Drake London in terms of he can catch the ball, play in the slot, make a guy miss and go find hidden yardage. And I think that that's the hang up, right? Is you're not going to get that AJ Brown, DK Metcalf guy in terms of the big linear athlete. You're not getting the big guy who's smooth, plays like a basketball player in your Drake London types. You're, maybe T Higgins either in terms of being able to go play the ball up like a rebounder, playing like power forward. So I understand why there's a hang up on where T-Mac can go and why his range is anywhere from 6 to 8 to late teens, early 20s. It's tough to kind of suss out how the league is going to feel about him. But I think that New York has a significant need at playmaking with their playmakers, and having Justin Fields there and trying to build this offense around him for at least the current times. I think the best thing to do is to try to get him some more receiving options, especially a jump ball guy.
Nice compliment to Garrett Wilson there as well, I feel like, with the way they're building that wide receiver group. All right, Tet McMillan goes off the board to the Jets at 7. And then Ruiz gets to pick for his Carolina Panthers at number 8. Get into David Tepper's head here, Ruiz.
Yeah.
You got the, what is it? He's got the testicle statue on his desk or whatever. Put yourself in the right mind frame here. And who are the Carolina Panthers going to go with?
I was going to take McMillan. I think the Panthers are kind of trying to throw out some smoke screens. Like Dave Canales last week was like, Xavier Legette, he's our number 1 receiver. I was like, that's a damn lie. That's a lie. If you've seen it, there's no way coming off his rookie season. Not that he was terrible, but at the catch point, the guy just wasn't what you wanted him to be. He let Bryce Young down a couple of times down the stretch there. But I do think having that jump ball winner, you have 2 big guys would suit Young, just because he's more of a soft tosser and the ball's in the air for a little bit longer than it is compared to stronger arm quarterbacks. And you want guys that can go up and win the ball there. But yeah, now I'm kind of scrambling. It's between Will Johnson and Tyler Warren for me. I'm going to go with Will Johnson. I know they just gave J.C. Horn all that money, but this franchise has been looking for a second quarterback for as long as I've been rooting for the team. They always manage to find one that you could play, and then the other guy becomes a liability. And I think Will Johnson complements J.C. Horn, different styles of cornerback. I think it makes it easier to game plan. And I think he is perhaps the best player on the board right now. If you're looking past some positions where I don't want to take these positions in the top 10. Ashton Genty's good. He's a player I'd make an exception for. Tyler Warren's good. But they're tight ends and they're running backs. I'm going to go with the cornerback. I'm going to go with the premium position here.
All right. Will Johnson at corner opposite J.C. Horn for the Carolina Panthers. I'm on the clock. 9th overall pick, New Orleans Saints. Are we sure this isn't a Shedeur Sanders team? The New Orleans Saints?
I'm not. I'm really not.
You're not sure. Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure either. I looked at him. I said, could they be? I think if there's a sleepery team here in the top 10, if he gets past 3, it would probably be them. But I didn't feel strongly enough about it to say I'm going to mock Shedeur Sanders to the New Orleans Saints.
What about the Jets? If I was making the Jets pick, I would have considered it.
That's interesting.
You should think. I think that it would be wise to think about it, right? And again, this is another team based on the way that the draft board is going, that their best move is probably to trade back, right? And see if you can get Shedeur a little bit later. I think that would be the right thing to do. But yeah, I think that he should probably be in play from every pick after 6 based on the way that it's gone so far.
Yeah.
Yeah, that contract with Justin Fields, it's not like, oh, we signed Justin Fields, we're not going to make a move at quarterback. So that certainly could be an interesting one. And if he slides to a certain point, then does a team like the Browns say, hey, we've got a bunch of picks, we can get back in there. Now we get Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders. Maybe that's an outcome that could potentially be in play. But for the Saints here at 9, I was looking a little bit at Tyler Warren. I was looking at some defensive players. I think I'm going to land on Jalen Walker, edge from Georgia for the New Orleans Saints. 6'1", 243, 11 and a half sacks the last 2 years, played a little off ball, played a little edge, high upside player, plays hard. I don't know. They really could go in a number of different directions. I was trying to get them some pass rush. I felt like that's certainly an area where they need a lot of help. There are other areas too. Offensive line, quarterback, corner. It is not a great roster, so you could go in a bunch of different directions, but I could see them just saying Jalen Walker is the top guy on our board here, so we are going to go with him. So I got Walker, number 9 to the New Orleans Saints. All right, closing out the top 10 here. We go back to Diante. The Chicago Bears, very interesting spot here. Ben Johnson made some moves with the offensive line. What do the Chicago Bears do with the 10th overall pick?
So this is really interesting because I think that a smart move here would be going with someone on the edge if the tackles are gone, right? Like I think heart of hearts, perfect scenario is someone like Mimbu or Campbell slides because of their arm length issues or the fact that Mimbu's not a ready-made left tackle right now based on just like his college tape. And then maybe that guy gets to 10 and now you can find a Braxton Jones replacement potentially at left tackle. So that was the way I was hoping it would go. But if it didn't go in that direction, I was prepared to go with Mykel Williams at number 10. And I think that this is a smarter pick than what I had initially thought. You know, I was really concerned with Mykel Williams' tape in 2024. And then you have to remember that he was dealing with an ankle issue, I believe, basically from the open of the season and just kind of gutted through it. And then you look at the age profile. I think he's not going to be 21 until the time of the draft. He might not be 21 until after the draft, right? So now you're talking about a guy in terms of trajectory is pointing upwards. The arm length is there. The explosiveness is there. You look at his tape when he is relatively healthy. You know you're going to get a high level run defender, and the pass rushing tools are there, even though the production hasn't necessarily matched it yet. And if I'm judging that, and there are a few guys in this class that kind of fit that profile, if I'm judging that against a Shamar Stewart, a James Pierce Jr., these guys who are really raw athletes who have not produced at the level that you would expect given their athletic ability, I think the Williams' ceiling is the highest, and I would be most comfortable with him right here playing with the Bears. And I think that now you have a nice rotation between Sweat, Dayo Odengbo, and having Mykel Williams as a young guy who can mix in and give you something on early downs as well.
I like it. Mykel Williams to the Chicago Bears, defensive lineman from Georgia. All right. Now this sets up a very interesting pick for Ruiz, the San Francisco 49ers at number 11, a team that feels like they're in transition. At the same time, feels like maybe they could bounce back in a big way in 2025. What direction does Ruiz have Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch going here with this pick?
This is one of those ones where if they're doing the discipline thing, to use that word again, like
don't do it.
You go to the trenches, but I'm not going there. What the hell? This is for fun. This is pretend. Why would I do that? I'm putting myself in Kyle Shanahan's shoes, and this has got to be the most vexing decision for him possible. He has a chance to draft Ashton Jeanty, and he can have a succession plan for Christian McCaffrey, or he can take Tyler Warren and have another tight end, another big body that you can move around, another chess piece, and have a succession plan for George Kittle, who's getting up there in age and is a player who, it remains to be seen, but I don't know if his game is going to age well just because of how much punishment he takes and he seeks out the punishment. So the shelf life could be a little shorter for them. It's got to be tough. Kyle Shanahan, I don't even think he would make a decision. Like the clock would run out and he would just be sitting there three down running backs on our dual threat tight end daughter type of situation. I'm gonna go with Ashton Genty because the writing is more.
Whoa!
Yep, the
I'm
writing
shocked.
is more on the
shocked.
wall with Christian McCaffrey, in my opinion. We saw it last year. He's going to Germany. We made fun of the trips to Germany. He might need another trip to Germany this summer. Why not just take his replacement right now and take Diante? And I think it would be more fun. I want to see him in San Francisco compared to some of these other teams. Maybe the team drafting the 2 picks, I would like to see him just because you have a similar coaching staff there. But no, I'm going with the fun pick here.
I'm stunned. I thought once Tyler Warren was still on the board there, and I can just picture him in that uniform, another tight end, another offensive playmaker. I thought you were going to go in that direction. It's tough with the Niner, with Shanahan, because for a while it was like they don't need to spend resources on a running back. Then they do spend resources on one running back, and he's awesome in that scheme. So how much does that change, Kyle Shanahan's overall philosophy here? Diante, he caught me off guard here with that pick.
It's funny. This was the one where I wish I was if I were making the pick, I would have done the discipline thing, right? I'm kind of glad that it landed in your guys' hands. And you did something that's maybe a little bit more fitting personality wise for Kyle Shanahan, is thinking like, I can't have my offense go through the sputters that it went through in 2024. We've got to have another playmaker available to us. And I would have thought that Tyler Warren would have been the guy, like you said, Sheil. I can see it now. They run the play action bootleg. Tyler Warren's out in the flat. You dump it off to him. He's got a matchup with the corner out there, some hapless DB, and he just runs right over him and gets another 15 yards after the catch. And now we look like the Kyle Shanahan offense of old. I think that if there wasn't a Christian McCaffrey question mark, right? If we were sure that it was done for him, or if we were sure that he was going to be 100% healthy, maybe the approach would have been different from Steven in that respect. But I think I get the idea of like the best version of this offense so far has had a dynamic running back. I can get that combination of Tevin Campbell and Devontae Freeman basically in one guy with Ashton Genty, right? And I could definitely see it in that respect. I just would have expected a pass catcher, because I think that if we were going to go in any direction with this offense, it would be that more so than running back. But I'm not mad at just taking the more dynamic guy, the more proven dynamic guy out of the backfield for that specific offense.
I think I would actually pick Warren, like if I was in the front office and had to do this. But no, we're doing a podcast. I'm taking Ashton Genty and giving him to the 49ers.
All right, I have the 12th pick with the Dallas Cowboys. You guys took all my guys. I'm like in a fantasy draft where you're like, all right, one of these guys is going to slip to me. I had Michael Williams as a potential replacement for DeMarcus Lawrence. I had Tet McMillan. I was looking at it going, man, if they get Tet McMillan, like that solves a lot of problems, really nice, I feel like, for the Dallas Cowboys. Combo. Yeah, that would be nice for them, where all of a sudden you look at it and say, this offense can really get back to what it was a couple years ago. Diante took him with the Jets here. And then I thought, all right, I passed on Genty with the Raiders. Now I'll get Genty with the other obvious spot here in the first round. But Ruiz goes off book and takes Genty with the 49ers. This is tough. I'm looking at this going, all right, best player available. Who do I take here? I guess I'm going Tyler Warren to the Dallas Cowboys. I know they've got Jake Ferguson, and he's been a good player for them, but I do feel like they just need another guy who can be a pass-catching weapon for them. And I think Warren is that guy. So you can figure it out. You don't overthink it. If there was another guy here that I thought, all right, it's another position similar to your player, then maybe I would go in that direction. I don't know that I necessarily see that guy in this spot. So Penn State tight end Tyler Warren, crazy productive in college. Diante just gave the scouting report there. Add him to that group offensively and see if it can take some attention off of CeeDee Lamb and give you another pass catching option for Dak Prescott. So there you go.
I like that. Yeah, I like that a lot. I think that would be a smart playmaking option for them. The guy's he's a great playmaker, right? He's a great playmaker. He would fit really well, I think, with Prescott. I think that that's a good mix of body type and skill type between CeeDee Lamb and the slot, having a guy you can kind of move around. I think about Trey McBride, even though it's not a one-to-one comparison. You just think of a guy who can play some X when you need him to and kind of play bully ball, who can play in the slot, create after the catch, who can grow as an inline blocker, over time. I think that there's a lot of potential there. It will be really smart for Dallas if that's how the board plays out. I just am shocked I think we're going to feel the reverberation of Ashton Genty at 11 for a few picks now, because as I'm going through what I expected on the board, I've got a lot of names that I've got to shuffle around, because I was kind of building it around certain guys being available in certain spots.
I had to play the wild card, and they have Jake Ferguson, but like with Brian Schottenheimer, not that you should be drafting based on Brian Schottenheimer's offense, it does work with 2 tight ends. I don't see that being a problem there.
So now's the point in the draft, if it plays out this way, where just Shedeur Sanders is the story, where everyone's going, where is he going to go? Is anyone going to trade up? How far is he going to slip? Why is he slipping? So that's where we would be here at this point. The 13th pick is the Miami Dolphins. And Diante, you've got the Dolphins. Who do they go with in this situation?
Had Teron Armstead not retired over the weekend, I would have really thought about defensive interior, right? Like you go on their our lads depth chart, and there's only like 4 names playing on the defensive interior. And this is an odd front defense. They need bodies and guys who can play there around Zach Sealer. But because there's no Teron Armstead, I think that you have to start really looking at this offensive line. I really like Kelvin Banks Jr. here. Powerful guy, maybe not as fleet of foot as some of the tackles that have gone ahead of him, right? But he's a guy who blocks really well in the run game. He's another guy who plays pretty well in terms of pure pass sets. I think he checks a lot of the boxes that you're looking for in terms of a solid tackle. And now I think that you kind of backstop what you expect Patrick Paul to become. And if he's not ready yet, right? If it's going to take more time, if you need to shuffle bodies, you have a guy like Banks there who I think can maybe step in and be more of a high floor guy right out the gate, where Patrick Paul, I think, is a little bit more of your high ceiling. If he hits and he's a Pro Bowl level player, the sky could be the limit for there. I think that Banks is just reliable and is an immediate addressal of a need that this team has.
All right. Dolphins get some O-line help with Kelvin Banks at 13. That puts Ruiz on the clock with the Indianapolis Colts at number 14. What do you got?
I'll take the tight end here. I'll go Colston Loveland from Michigan. I think he's maybe like the Kelsey to Warren's George Kittle. If you want to make a player comp, you can move him around. He's more of a receiver. I think he can block in line if he has to, but I don't think that's necessarily a selling point for him. And the Colts need pass catchers. They need a tight end. No more Granson targets. I'm sorry, watching Anthony Richardson's tape all year long. Like Richardson had his accuracy issues, but the tight end position was a problem for Indianapolis. And I think this is an easy way to solve it. I was thinking about going linebacker here. It's a need for the team. I think Jihad Campbell would be someone that Chris Ballard would like, just based on his past draft picks at the position. But ultimately, I think you need to go offense here if you're the Colts.
6'6", 248. So you got a big, you got a big wingspan where, yeah, it doesn't have to be necessarily that accurate. It can still come down with those. So Colston Loveland is the pick for the Colts at number 14 there. That puts me on the clock. 15, the Atlanta Falcons, who only have 5 picks in this entire draft. The Atlanta Falcons only have 5 picks. I thought maybe one of those Georgia defenders that already got taken, I thought that might make sense. I thought Will Johnson might make sense. I'm going to go with the guy that I'm looking at it now. All right, see, this is the point of the draft for now. He was about to say the name, and then I second guess myself. Do I change it here and go with a different? I'm looking at 2 defensive players here. All right, now I'll go with the initial one. I'll go with Jihad Campbell, the linebacker from Alabama, off-ball linebacker, 6'3", 235, reliable starter. 3-down player, had a great combine, led Alabama in tackles for loss, sacks, and forced fumbles last year. So Falcons, they really need defensive line help. If there was a pass rusher there, I would have looked at it and said, okay, go ahead and grab him. And maybe I'll regret that as we continue down the line here. But just kind of going off the board, who was available, I decided Jihad Campbell was the best player available to help that front 7. So that's the pick at number 15. All right. To close out the first half of the first round, it goes back to Diante, and the Arizona Cardinals are up at number 16.
So Arizona can go in a lot of different directions, right? I think that we've kind of mentioned this. This is a tough way for the board to work out for Arizona. I think you would like to have a few more options available in terms of high ceiling defensive players. And just knowing Jonathan Gannon, the way he likes to play, knowing the way this defense is built, there are some interior defensive linemen that are interesting here. And I just want to go with the most disruptive one because I think that's just most fitting of their style of play. So I'm going Walter Nolan here. Number 16
Wow,
plays defensive tackle.
nice.
I thought about corner as well, but I like a guy who is good with his hands. He's explosive. Again, Sheil, hearing you and Fran Duffy talk about production scores and where guys might land in terms of their ceilings is something he was talking about on his podcast covering the Eagles as well. I just think that Walter Nolan checks a lot of boxes in terms of being a disruptive interior piece, and you can do a lot with him. He can play on the nose if you need to and be quick. He can play at 3 technique and kind of anchor if you need him to. So I like that kind of versatility with the way that Arizona plays defense. So yeah, defensive tackle Walter Nolan from Ole Miss is going to be the pick here.
I like it. He's a guy who just prepping for the pod and looking at various mocks is kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
I sort of am with you that I think he's going to go higher than maybe people think right now, but who knows? We'll see what the buzz is here in the next few weeks, but certainly a high upside player there out of Ole Miss. All right. Bengals, you got to nail it for me, Ruiz. Just picture me in August getting ready to pick the Cincinnati Bengals to win the AFC North. Who is the rookie I can count on here that they take in the first round that has an immediate impact?
You kind of, if you're the Bengals, I feel like you just kind of got to keep throwing darts at the dartboard with these same 2 positions where I feel like they've been trying to fill in for the last couple of years at quarterback and edge defender. It's tough. I'm going to go with Jahdae Barron from Texas just because of the value at this point. I think he's slid enough where I'm thinking about Mike Green here, but I think you could get him maybe a few picks later, so it could be a trade down. But just based on value at this point in the draft, at pick number 17, I'm going to go Barron, who's not necessarily like this man coverage guy who's going to lock down a number 1 receiver, but he's going to fit and do a job in a zone-heavy defense. And it remains to be seen what the Bengals defense is going to look like now, but I expect him to be able to fit in to what they're going to be doing.
All right,
I think that would be a smart personality change for them, not to cut you off, Sheil, but they've taken swings at the corner position with guys who were either height, weight, speed guys who are just speed guys, these kind of raw athletes at corner, and they feel like, we'll coach them up and get them to be disciplined enough to execute within the scheme. I think they're bringing in a guy like Barron. Like Steven said, this is a guy you can drop in and be like, you can play nickel. We can bump you outside if we need to. Every once in a while, you're going to be disciplined in zone coverage. That's all we need. You're going to be physical. You're going to be a good tackler. There are so many things you don't have to question with Barron. I do think that ultimately you have to ask yourself whether or not you think the pure coverage chops are good enough for him to have a high ceiling to be around the middle of the first round. But I do think that as a role player, this is an instant impact player, especially for a defense that has been missing guys who are just dependable around the ball and on the perimeter.
And I know they're changing the scheme. Anarumo's out, Al Golden is in. Right. But I do think they still need a replacement for that Mike Hilton style of player, and I think he can kind of fit in there. I don't know if he's going to play outside or inside, but just a hard-nosed football player is. I think that's what they need. Like Diante said, they've been chasing certain profiles based on athleticism. This guy's going to come in, he's going to play football, and you're not going to have to worry about him competing, especially if you put him inside. I think he has the mentality to hang inside when you have to fit the run and do all that other stuff. Like usually we used to think of like slot corners as these small guys who just, cover experts, guys who can cover an option route and man coverage. But I think the league is kind of shifting away from that. I think Barron would be a good piece to fit in there.
Yeah, I think, like you said, they need competent starters on defense. So they go with Jahdae Barron, defensive back from Texas. All right, I'm up at 18. The Seattle Seahawks. Just feels like I know they're saying best player available. It sure seems like from the offseason moves, they just got to add some offensive linemen somewhere here. I'm going to go with Gray Zabel, the interior offensive lineman from North Dakota State, has started at 3 different positions, has played all 5 positions, had a great Senior Bowl, great combine workout, was a very good player there at North Dakota State. So I think, level of competition maybe aside, he is able to check a lot of boxes for you. You don't have to figure out right away. He's going to play exactly at this one spot. You can see how things maybe shake out with your offensive line, with the rest of the draft, other guys you add later in the draft. They've only added 1 offensive lineman this offseason. That was Josh Jones, a backup. So they are putting all their eggs in the hay. Clint Kubiak's going to be able to make our offensive line look better than it was last year basket, all while adding Sam Darnold, who holds the football quite a bit there, as their quarterback. So they got to figure some stuff out. I do feel like John Schneider must just be so tired of it at this point, answering the same questions, but the questions are still there for a good reason. So they go best offensive line. Maybe not everybody's best offensive lineman on the board, but certainly a guy who's kind of in that next grouping there. And they go with Gray Zabel. All right, take a break. We come back. We go to pick number 19. Shedeur Sanders is still on the board here as we get to pick number 19. Some other interesting prospects as well. We'll get to those when we come back. All right, we are back on the Ringer NFL show. Gray Zabel off the board to the Seahawks. Diante, you're up with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
This was one of the easier ones for me because we're really playing the type here for this team. It's going to be trenches, and the offensive line is fine. So that only really leaves you with so many other options. And knowing the way that they like to build this defensive line, the biggest height, weight, speed guy here will probably be Shamar Stewart. So I'm going to go with Shamar Stewart here to play on the edge in the Bucs defense. There are a lot of questions that I still have about where his ceiling is at, right? Like, in my first mock draft, he was the top 10 pick, and we were closer to coming out of the combine at the time that I was working on that, right? So you're thinking about all the heat that a guy has after his testing. People start talking about what his ceiling may be. You go readdress the tape, and you see, like, all right, there are some things here, but maybe not top 10 types of flashes, right? But I do think that as an athlete, it's going to be really hard to justify not taking a chance on a player like this. And if there's one place he can go that's just going to cut him loose and tell him to go be a game wrecker on the edge, I think it would be Tampa Bay. So Shamar Stewart here to play on the edge for the Buccaneers.
Yeah, one of the more interesting prospects when you look at the profile, like you mentioned, just 4.5 sacks in 3 seasons, 1.5 sacks last season. But then you look at what he did from an athletic profile. It's like,
the greatest combine performance ever if you're going by relative athletic score.
Relative athletic score. Yeah. For those who don't know, is this score that, you can Google it and check out the site, but they've got this database going back to 1987, and they've got over 2,000 edge rusher prospects in that. And he had the highest relative athletic score of that group. We're talking, Javon Kearse, Myles Garrett, Jadeveon Clowney, Trayvon Walker. These guys are all in that sample, and he ranked first there. So the production hasn't been there, but like you said, if you got Todd Bowles and he says, I can work with this guy, and now you could look back all of a sudden and say, no, he was kind of that ball of clay, sort of a Danielle Hunter type, where didn't happen for him all the way in college, but give him some time, put him in the right spot, and he's going to be a high upside prospect. So yeah, I'm very interested to see where he goes in the draft, where he lands, what the fit is, who the coach is. So I do like that one, him landing with Todd Bowles there. All right. That was number 1920. I feel like we didn't do this on purpose, Ruiz, but I love the teams you got. We got the Broncos now. You got the Panthers earlier. You got the Niners before. I feel like you got the Panthers. I feel like it's a lot of teams that just in my head, I'm like, oh, Ruiz has connections with all these teams just based on like takes you've had or conversations we've had over the last couple of years. So Denver Broncos at 20. What do you got?
I wish I could have gotten the Dolphins pick at 13 so I could have taken Shedeur Sanders. But I'm going to go.
That would have been funny.
I was wondering about that when Diante went up. Yeah, I was thinking about that.
If I know Sean Payton, and I don't know him, but I know him parasocially, I would be thinking running back here and Amarian Hampton, but I'm not going to go there. I'm going to go wide receiver. I think that's the obvious avenue for them. And now it really comes down to what Sean Payton wants. And I think it comes down to between Luther Burden from Missouri and Matthew Golden from Texas. I don't think he's going to be able to resist that 4.29 speed or whatever it was Golden ran at the combine. And I think he's more of a polished receiver at this point. So I'll go with Golden and give the Broncos another receiver to play to join that receiving core. And I think he fits in too as a wide receiver too. I don't think you're expecting him to be some like true X number one receiver one day, but I think he fills in a role that they need.
There you go. Matthew Golden getting some receiver help for Bo Nix. The Denver Broncos get their guy there at number 20. All right. 21.
Here it is.
Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm up. Do you do it? Do you go with Shedeur Sanders? Are you texting Aaron Rodgers during the draft? Dude, can you, we kind of need an answer here or not? I'm taking him. Shedeur Sanders to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I would feel great about that. It might not work out, who knows? But at 21, you're not trading up. You're not giving up multiple first-round picks. You're not using a top 5 pick. If you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, and if he can be like the 19th or 21st best quarterback over the next 4 seasons, that's actually a great value given what you're going to be paying him on a rookie contract. So I like the fit. Go play for Mike Tomlin. You got some guys on defense. You got a couple wide receivers there. You look at their depth chart when I was doing this, and I'm like, man, there are things to like certainly still about this football team, even though their season came to an abrupt crash there at the end last year. So Shedeur Sanders to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Diante, how do you feel about this from Sanders' perspective? If you're a Steelers fan, how do you feel about it? Is it realistic that he would actually fall this far? What do you think?
This is the one pick since like 13 where I didn't have to kind of like reconfigure the way I expected the rest of the board to go so far. This makes a lot of sense. Even if Aaron Rodgers is in the building, it shouldn't stop you from bringing in Shedeur Sanders. I actually think that like Sanders, given like family dynamics and kind of his personality, might actually be able to stand being in the locker room, being in the meeting room on a day-to-day basis with a personality like Aaron Rodgers. So I think that there will be a little bit of alignment in that from that perspective. And in terms of situation you'd want to bring a quarterback like Sanders up into, this is perfect. For play style, I think Mike Tomlin's going to look at him immediately and be like, oh, you're a guy who doesn't like to turn the ball over. Great. I appreciate that. You can play for me. And we've got these big receivers now where for Shedeur, and one of the ways I think he'll be able to succeed in the league is being able to identify those one-on-one matchups pre-snap and take chances, right? That was what Joe Burrow did early in his career. And I don't think that Shedeur Sanders' ceiling is Joe Burrow's, but I think that one of the things that he can do to really serve himself is understanding when he can take those chances so that way he's not hanging in the pocket and taking unnecessary punishment, trying to wait for something to come open. And I think that this is the right environment because they're going to build in the trenches. They're going to try to surround them with the run game. They do like big-bodied wide receivers, and they develop that position well. And you're always going to have a defense that's at least competent on the other side. So even if he doesn't play at all in 2025, if you get to 2026 and 2027, and now this guy's taking some time to learn the pro game, this is probably the best timeline for him to be successful.
All right. Ruiz, you on board? Shedeur Sanders in Pittsburgh, or you still want to see Rodgers?
No, I'm on board, and I don't think bringing in Rodgers prevents you from bringing in Sanders. It would be funny to see Rodgers sign with them and then them draft a quarterback immediately in the 20s, like the Packers did a couple of years ago with Jordan Love. I have a confession to make. I've been watching more and more of Sanders. I kind of like him as a prospect more than I thought I would.
Gino has been the comp for some, so that shouldn't be too shocking.
Okay, that's blasphemous. Now I hate it. All right, I'm off. All right, let's move on. I'm done. I don't like him anymore.
There you go. All right, 22, Diante has the Los Angeles Chargers. What do you got?
They're actually in a beautiful position right now because there are players available at multiple positions of need for them. You could take a swing at corner and like a Siobhan Ravel, who's maybe a little bit more of a projection given the fact that he's coming off of an injury that kind of sidelined him, right? You can bring in a guy like Tyler Booker to play guard if you don't trust that Zion Johnson can step in and be a starter for you. And Booker, I think, is probably the best interior offensive lineman outside of Gray Zabel in this class. You could take a shot at edge. I think the issue there is the most talented edges right now are probably Mike Green and James Pierce. And these are two guys. One obviously has a much more significant, serious off-field thing in Mike Green, right? And I think that once we get to talking about him being a pick, we can maybe kind of talk about why it is that he's in the later end of the first round. And then with James Pierce, we heard a lot at the combine about people not really knowing what makes him tick as a competitor, not as productive in 2024 after being really hyped up as maybe the next guy in terms of being that speed rusher, and Los Angeles could definitely use it. So I was looking at the board and I realized there's a Michigan guy here who's a really good football player that would also fit a position of need for them. This is a Kenneth Grant pick for me. You can go in,
100%.
Give him to play along the interior of the defensive line. I think that would be a big help for this team. He's not going to be a penetrator and disruptor all the time because of his size, but he can be a gap plugger. He's a guy who can play on first and second down and really kind of add value to their run defense, which will need some help when you look at the interior of that defensive line. So yeah, Michigan man gets his Michigan guy. This is Tyler Booker playing for the Los Angeles Wolverines.
There you go.
I feel like this is just like the perfect storm for this pick to happen. It's a need. I think just the way he plays as like a nose tackle, like you think about winning in the trenches when you think about Jim Harbaugh, and you think about even like a Greg Roman style of offense. And then on the other side, obviously the defense is going to take on that same personality. And like Diante said, the Michigan connections there. He knows these coaches. It's like telegraphed basically.
Kenneth Grant to the Los Angeles Chargers. All right, 23rd overall pick, Ruiz, the Green Bay Packers. Who do you got?
I mean, I guess we can take Mike Green here if you can ignore the off-field incidents, which I don't think you can ignore at this point. But maybe if he
two
drops
allegations
down
of sexual assault to be clear on what those are. Yep,
he's denied both of them, but I mean, I wouldn't feel comfortable taking him here. Maybe you can go with Donovan Ezraku from Boston College. I think. I honestly, that's who I'll go with. I'll go with him instead of Mike Green. I think that's I don't think there's too much difference between them as prospects, and you don't have to deal with the off the field stuff. So yeah, I'll go with Donovan Ezraku from Boston College.
All right, there you go.
I would have taken Kenneth Grant here if Diante hadn't taken
Kenneth Grant would have made a lot of sense for them as well. I like Ezraku. I like Ezraku for Green Bay because he's a little bit more of a proven commodity as a rusher. So that would be a little bit of like a personality break for Green Bay, where they've tried to bring in these big hulking bodies to play on the edge, and hopefully they can turn them into refined pass rushers. I think Ezraku is not a one-to-one comparison, but I think of Latu last year, right? We had a lot of conversation about what kind of edge rusher do you want, right? Do you want a guy who can step in year one and he's already got a pass rushing bag, so to speak? And you watch Ezraku, and that's definitely evident, right? Like he uses his hands really well. He can bend a little bit. He knows how to set up some moves. He's a little undersized, so you got to talk about like what he's going to be on early downs. But we saw Green Bay take smaller bodies in inside the interior, try to use guys on simulated pressures. You know, they're a havoc-based defense. I think that Ezraku could work in that kind of defense for Green Bay. So I don't hate that pick, even if I think that like James Pierce Jr. or Mike Green might be higher ceiling types of swings. I think that Ezraku can step in on day one and give this team exactly what it needs in terms of pass rushing pedigree.
Pierce is definitely the high upside pick here. I would be a little sized by the frame. He's a taller guy, lankier guy, but that's another pick I would consider here. But God, I would have loved to see Kenneth Grant drop to them. I'm tired of seeing this team just get pushed around in the run game. It's been like 4 years now. I'm sure Packers fans are tired of it. That would have been a nice change for them.
All right, there you go. I got the Minnesota Vikings up next, 24. They've only got 4 picks in this draft. 1 pick in the top 75, 2 picks in the top 100. They are last in draft capital in the entire NFL. At the same time, they got a very good roster. And so I was looking at this going, man, they really could go in a bunch of different directions. But I think I have my favorite, of my picks at least, favorite player scheme fit here. And I'm going Nick Emenwari, the safety from South Carolina. I mean, this is also one of the most interesting first-round prospects here. 6'3", 220, just a ridiculous athletic profile. Again, you know, I was mentioning that relative athletic score. If you look at it for safeties, we're talking over 1,200. He has the highest relative athletic score. And I think it's just not athleticism. Watching him, I really liked his instincts in zone, in coverage. He almost can, you know, he is a hybrid type player that I think Brian Flores will know what to do with. He can play in the box. He can play in the slot. He was playing in the post at times. So you can really do a lot of different things with him. I liked him quite a bit. One of my favorite guys in the first round. And so we're going to pair him with Brian Flores. There you go. That's my pick.
I don't hate that. I mean, Emenwari is definitely a ball of clay type. So in terms of coach, scheme versus prospect fit, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that Josh Metellus, while he's a decent safety, isn't so good that you can't bring in a guy in the first round and go compete with him. Obviously, you know, Harrison Smith getting up there in age, you're going to want to have some kind of preparation for, you know, the day that he walks away from the game or starts to hit that age cliff. And while I don't know that Emenwari can necessarily be that level of difference maker, all the athleticism is there. right? All the athleticism is there. If he gets the right kind of coaching, he can turn into something. And I kind of like the idea of having him as a move around piece, as well as Byron Murphy, who was a move around piece for them on the back end. You can use him as a blitzer. You can use him as a linebacker if need be. I think there are a lot of ways in which Emmanwori can make winning football plays for this team, even if it's a little bit awkward at first because they're trying to figure out exactly where to drop him in around the guys that he's playing with.
All right. We got the 25th pick, the Houston Texans. Now where we see, is there a third quarterback that goes off the board? Now, probably not, because we're not doing trades in this one. But again, if this were the real live draft, that's what we'd be talking about. Will a third quarterback sneak in to the bottom quarter here of the first round? Diante, the Houston Texans, who do you got them taking here?
Good tackles don't miss the first round. You're drafting this late. If there are tackles available, you cannot afford to play around with what might be available on day two. To me, the most talented guy that's here would be Josh Simmons. Right. You can make an argument for Conor as well, but I just think you watch Simmons when he was healthy, you watch what the ceiling can be in terms of his ability to work in pass sets. Obviously a really good athlete, somebody who can do a lot of things for you in the run and pass game. I think it would be a good fit within this offense. There are a lot of questions about, again, I don't want to say character as though he's a bad decision maker. I think that there are still some things up in the air about what makes him tick, similar to James Pierce, right? And kind of what he was on a day-to-day basis at Ohio State. But the talent is clearly there. And something like, maybe this guy's a little bit of a jerk, but definitely not scare off somebody like D'Amico Ryans. I think that he will be a good fit in that building. And I think that that's a good situation to get the most out of a player like Simmons.
All right. Texans finally get some offensive line help. Some bizarre moves on the offensive line in the offseason. They draft a guy that hopefully can help protect CJ Stroud. All right, the Los Angeles Rams, great. They found the joy of actually having a first round pick last year. It worked out very well for them. They've got another one in this exercise, picking 26th overall. Ruiz, who do you got?
I'm going to make it a run on tackles. I'm going to go with Josh Conor from Oregon. I think he needs to add some bulk, but I think that can happen in the NFL. You get into an NFL strength and conditioning program. And I just think the Rams need offensive line help. That's always been the thing with Sean McVay. The health of the offensive line has been a proxy for the health of the offense. And we saw that throughout the year last year. And I think if they can get better there, just get solidified there for more than 1 year at a time, maybe they can get something cooking and they're not this team that just pops up as a contender every couple of years.
All right. I like that one. They go offensive line there to the Los Angeles Rams at number 26, Josh Conor from Oregon. All right. That puts me on the clock here with the Baltimore Ravens. Diante took Walter Nolan a little early. I thought, he's the guy I could see kind of falling down there. And Ravens would really like him, but I can't go with him. I thought Ezaraku could also be an option for the Baltimore Ravens in this spot. But, I'm thinking of all the reaction and, usually the Ravens make a pick and it's like the Ravens and the Eagles and everyone's going, oh man, I can't believe they did it again. And there's universal praise. That guy to me here is probably Malachi Starks, the safety from Georgia. So that's who I'll go with. Malachi Starks, 6'1", 197, high IQ player. Did not have the greatest testing and is a little undersized. But again, he played at Georgia and he played really well at Georgia. So you kind of pair him with Kyle Hamilton back there in that secondary. He can play a little slot too, even though you have Marlon Humphrey to do that. If there's an injury or you move pieces around, he's just another piece in the secondary for the Baltimore Ravens. So that's the pick. Malachi Starks out of Georgia, which moves us to, let's see, the final. We got the Lions,
final 5
Commanders, picks, Bills, Chiefs, and Eagles left. These are the contenders from last year alongside the Ravens, which we just mentioned. Diante, you're trying to get in the head of Brad Holmes, man. They got their own draft board there. They're not following any of this consensus nonsense. They want to pick someone who they can then rub it in your face a year later and say, you guys all ripped me. And now look at this player. Who are the Detroit Lions going with at number 28?
Oh, there are so many things open for them to do here that makes it's kind of tricky in a lot of ways. I think in a perfect world, you go maybe try to bring in a defensive interior guy who has a high ceiling, right? Just because they do have guys that are starting to approach, starting to get a little bit more advanced in age up front around Aiden Hutchinson. But I think that trying to find a number 2 edge rusher is probably the biggest priority looking at the board right here. I'm going to go with Mike Green here just because the ceiling is so high. And I do think if there is a team that can look at his situation and say, hey, if he is, we are willing to take a chance on what he is saying being the truth in terms of him not being guilty or having participated in any of the sexual assault allegations that have been levied against him. And if that's the case, then you might get an excellent football player here. And like I said earlier, that is really the reason why we're talking about him in the late 20s, because you look at him and I mean, he has top 10 talent when you talk about the athletic profile and what he did in terms of production as a pass rusher and run defender at Marshall.
All right, there you go. Mike Green to the Detroit Lions. It worked out again. Ruiz has the Washington Commanders. His home, not the team he roots for, but his hometown team, the one his relatives, I believe, root for here. Ruiz, what are we doing with the Washington Commanders at pick number 29?
I'm going to go with James Pierce Jr. here from Tennessee. I think the upside is just too much to pass on. It's a position of need for them. You get the upside, you get the position of need. I think it's a little lower for him. Like 29th is a good value for him. I think any team needs edge rushing help. I think this team needs it, especially how they've churned the roster over the last couple of years. I would feel very confident in this pick if I was Washington. But there were some other options they could have gone after. Obviously, like even a running back here, Marion Hampton would have been an interesting piece to add to that offense. Yeah. Another dynamic playmaker, especially with how they get their ball carriers into space on the perimeter. That would be a tough guy to kind of rein in for the defense. But no, I'll go with the eat your vegetables pick and go in the trenches.
I do like that. The eat your vegetables pick. I'm going to be using that a lot in our podcast here in the weeks ahead. It's true. Sometimes you're like, ooh, this guy would be so much fun. But no, we should do the right thing and just draft someone on the line of scrimmage. All right. I'm up. My last pick, the Buffalo Bills at number 30. I was hoping to get them some pass rush help. Do I like the pass rushers who are on the board, or do I go corner here? I'm going to go with corner. Let's go with the guy that Diante mentioned before, Siobhan Ravel Jr., cornerback out of East Carolina, 6'2", 194. They tried corner before, did not hit with Khair Elam. They hit later in the draft with Christian Benford. They lost Rasul Douglas in free agency. Revel was a 2-year starter, had a season-ending knee injury, but it was in September. So he's got high-end traits, tough physical corner. Siobhan Revel Jr. fills a spot there opposite Christian Benford at corner for the Buffalo Bills. All right. Final 2 picks, the Super Bowl participants. Diante, you've got the Kansas City Chiefs at 31. Who do you got?
Oh, man, I'm going to filibuster here because Siobhan Revel coming off the board messes up what I thought would happen for Philadelphia.
Okay.
Like, I think if you're Howie Roseman, you're kind of muttering, got your hand over your mouth muttering a little bit because it might have been nice to get a guy like Siobhan Revel there. I think that there are a lot of doors open for Kansas City at 31 as well.
Here, I'll filibuster here for you for a little bit because I'll tell you some guys who are available just for people wondering, how did this guy not go yet? Tyler Booker is certainly one of them. Interior offensive lineman from Alabama, was a 2-year starter at left guard, really considered, tough, smart, good player.
Back off of him, by the way. I have the next pick. Don't take him.
Tested very poorly at the combine. So it depends how much you are concerned about that. But when you look at kind of speed, explosion, it was not good. So do you care about that for an interior offensive lineman, or do you say he was good on tape? So you've got him. You've got Amari Hampton, who Ruiz just mentioned, running back from North Carolina. I think pretty much the consensus RB2 in this class. Could he end up being a first-round pick? Emeka Egbuka, smart, feels like he can come in and play right away. Wide receiver from Ohio State. He's still on the board here. Luther Burden is a player I really like. The slot receiver from Missouri, who I think has a lot of juice and is a really interesting player. He's still on the board here. And then one guy I just considered with that Bills pick, I was picking between Ravel and Derek Harmon, the defensive tackle from Oregon. So he's another player who's still on the board here. All right, Diante. I think I did a good job.
Why,
that might have been my standout moment for 2025 podcasting right there.
I mean, and not only that, but you literally named all the guys that I have on my list now. And that's why it's so tough, right? Because these are very disparate ideas of how to approach the draft. I'm really caught between whether or not I want to do Luther Burden here, because I think that there are a lot of ways in which he's a don't
not again. We don't need another one of these players in Kansas City. Please, no.
And I think the versatility that's there, if they were able to make it work with Rashee Rice, I think that room probably looks at Luther Burden and says, what is everybody missing here? This is a guy who can play in the slot. He can play outside. He has real speed. He has good hands. Yes, the production dipped, but I would say that the situation was just kind of a mess in Missouri for him last year. He didn't get the best situation to make the most of him. But I want to go, I'm going to take my vegetables here. I'm going to take a versatile guy who can play inside and outside on the offensive line. I'm going to take Donovan Jackson, somebody who can compete at the tackle spot. If it doesn't work and Kingsley Suamataia isn't ready to play guard, he can play guard. That's his more natural spot. I think that's a nice building block to have. And if it wasn't going to be him or Burden, it would have been Derek Harmon. So there are a lot of doors open for Philadelphia after this. But I think that if you look at what cost this team a Super Bowl, it's the fact that they weren't able to protect Patrick Mahomes in the biggest game.
All right. Diante debating between offensive line and wide receiver. Again, eats his vegetables, takes the disciplined pick there with Donovan Jackson, which leads us to Ruiz with the Eagles. Whoever they pick here will be universally applauded. There will be Howie season tweets. There will be Howie does it again.
The memes
How did he get away with this? The memes, all of that. Ruiz, who is going to be that guy for the Eagles at number 32?
I mean, if I'm going for like maximum Howie celebration, I'll probably go with Burden. I mean, obviously they have two great wide receivers, but obviously they care about that third wide receiver spot. They invested draft capital to bring in Dotson last year. I'll go with Burden because I do think this is like the value pick here. This is how everyone knows his name. Everyone knew about him. This is the perfect Howie pick. Tyler Booker is the other guy I'm considering. Obviously there's the athleticism concerns, but the guy can play, and you pair him up with Jeff Stoutland and you have a hole at that guard position. But I'll go with Burden. I'll go with the Howie pick, and Howie gets the tweets. Howie gets, he's trending on Twitter, and I'm sure he'll be happy about that.
We get the, here's the Eagles starting lineup.
Yes, who's stopping this?
Yeah, who's stopping this? It would actually fit for this. Yeah, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith.
I can quote tweet and say Jalen Hurts and get some likes.
Luther Burden. So there you go. Luther Burden, the 32nd overall pick. All right, I'm going to run these down real quick. Titans take Cam Ward. Browns, Travis Hunter. 3 at the 3rd pick. Giants take Abdul Carter. 4th pick, Patriots take Will Campbell. 5th pick, Jaguars take Mason Graham. 6th pick, Raiders take Armand Membo. 7th pick, Jets take Tet McMillan. 8th pick, Panthers, Will Johnson. 9th pick, Jalen Walker to the Saints. 10th pick, Chicago Bears, Michael Williams. 11th pick, the San Francisco 49ers end up with Ashton Genty, maybe the most fun pick in our first round mock here. Number 12, Cowboys take Tyler Warren. 13, Dolphins, Kelvin Banks. 14th, Colts, Colston Loveland. 15th, Falcons, Jihad Campbell. 16th pick, we've got the Cardinals with Walter Nolan. 17th, Bengals, Jahdae Barron. 18th, Seahawks, Gray Zabel. 19th, the Bucks take Shamar Stewart. 20th, the Broncos go Matthew Golden. 21st, the Steelers end up with Shedeur Sanders with the 21st pick in our mock. 22nd, Chargers go Kenneth Grant. 23, Packers, Donovan Ezeroku. 24th, Vikings, Nick Emenwari. 25, Texans, Josh Simmons. 26, Rams, Josh Connerly Jr. 27, Ravens, Malachi Starks. 28, Lions take Mike Green. 29, Commanders take James Pierce Jr. 30th, Bills, Siobhan Ravel Jr. 31st, Chiefs take Donovan Jackson. And 32, the Eagles take Luther Burden. That is the Ringers NFL first mock draft of 2025. Ruiz, how do you feel about it?
I feel like I got a good haul with my teams. How many teams did I have? Like 12, 11? I don't know how to do
11,
math. But yeah, I got 11 future Pro Bowlers and all Pro Bowlers.
You're feeling good, like a proud fantasy owner there. All right, Diante, How do you feel?
I feel like I did what I always do, man. Like I'm a trenches guy. I'm a trenches defense guy. I'm a eat your vegetables guy, right? And I think that most of my picks kind of reflected that. I wasn't thinking about being too adventurous here. We stay within a straight and narrow path.
He's anti-Howie. He's the GM who all the fans complain about it. Every draft night, they're like, "Oh my god, another
so
offensive line."
Yes, I'm the Packers, right?
I'm getting fired after like a year. I'm picking running backs with the 49ers,
All right, there you go. So those were the 32 picks. We'll be back later this week. We're going to look at the various NFC and AFC teams and go over how much confidence do you have in these teams to nail the draft, go over some of the track records of these GMs, these decision makers, what's at stake for each of them here. So we're going to do that later this week, and we'll do that next week as well. A lot of draft content still to come. Like I mentioned, we will do one more mock draft before the actual draft, where we just do some on-the-fly trades. We'll switch up who gets which teams. That one will be a lot of fun as well. All right. Thank you to Stephen Ruiz and Diante Lee. Thanks to Christopher Sutton for producing. Kiera Givens on social. Additional production supervision by Conor Nevins and Arjuna Ramgopal. I'm Sheil Kapadia. We'll talk to you next time on the Ringer NFL Show.